Today we're going to talk about combat in Kings of Kirth. Let's talk about melee combat. Here we have a human vanguard unit, and here we have a zombie unit from the undead. If these two were to combat, they would need to be positioned in order to be within each other's zone of influence. As the human has 5 hit points and the zombie has 4, the match is relatively even. If the zombie attacks the human, he will roll a d4 according to his sheet. The zombies clearly have 4 HP and they roll a d4 to attack. They also roll a d4 for defense. The zombies also have passive abilities, such as Infected Bite. It reads, if a unit is killed by a zombie unit, it becomes a zombie upon death. The stakes are relatively high for the human vanguard here. The zombie rolls a 3 on its attack, and the human vanguard rolls a 1. He suffers 2 damage. The human vanguard, however, gets to counterattack, and he rolls a 4. The zombie rolls a 2. He will also suffer 2 damage. And that is the end of the round. Let's say we add another vanguard in an adjacent square, meaning one of the squares directly next to the vanguard in question. This time, the vanguard is the attacking unit. He rolls a 3. The defending zombie also rolls a 3. Therefore, no damage is exchanged. However, the zombie still gets a counterattack. He rolls a 4. The vanguard, being next to one of his compatriots, rolls a 3. However, because the human vanguard has shield wall, according to his sheet here on the human army card, the 3 becomes a 4 and no damage is exchanged. Now let's take this vanguard away and simply have a mano-a-mano fight here. The undead, being that it's his turn, rolls a 4, and the human rolls a 1. He takes 3 damage, which will bring him to 0. The human, at this point, becomes a zombie, is reset to 4 HP, and begins attacking his own team. Now let's say that the other had occurred. The human attacks the undead. The human rolls a 3. The undead rolls a 1, meaning that he takes 2 damage, bringing him to 0. The undead is simply removed from the board, and the human must take his spot. Now I'd like to talk about a different type of combat. Ranged combat. Let's take 2 ranged units, the human ranger and the skeletal ranger, both of whom are relatively equally matched. As you can see, the human ranger has 8 HP, rolls a d8 to attack, and a d6 to defend. He also has special abilities and special ability points which he could use, but we'll cover that later. The skeletal ranger also has 8 HP, rolls a d8 to attack, and a d6 to defend, with the same special abilities. Beginning a ranged combat, when the 2 units are within each other's area of influence, will initiate a ranged combat. The human rolling a d8 to attack, which he rolls an 8, and the undead a d6 to defend, which he rolls a 2. On the initial attack, the undead will take 6 damage. The undead ranger, however, gets a counterattack. He rolls a d8 and rolls a 2. The human ranger rolls a d6 to defend, and he rolls a 5. In this case, the human ranger riposts, or foils the attack and damages the attacker for 3 damage, killing the skeletal ranger. Since the human is the attacker, he must take the undead's spot. Let's, however, introduce something else. One of the undead's necromancer units moves into this position. The human ranger cannot attack him using a regular attack, so therefore he would need to use a special ability if he were to attack him on his turn. But let's cover that later. Let's assume that it is the undead's turn from this position. The undead necromancers have 7 HP, they roll a d8 to attack and a d6 to defend. They also have a passive ability called Unholy Energy Blast, which is essentially their ranged attack. It doesn't cost any special ability points, and if the target takes damage, it's also inflicted by a malus of -1 to its next defense roll. That will be important. The undead necromancer rolls a d8 to attack, and he rolls a 7. the human ranger rolls a d6 to defend, and he rolls a 1. He takes 6 damage, reducing him to 2 HP. Because the necromancer is not within the ranger's direct area of influence, he cannot counterattack, and the round has ended. The ranger may, however, choose to use one of his special ability points to counterattack against the necromancer. His points would be used to cast Magical Arrow. Because he is the ranger from the right side of the human army, he is considered as Troop 2, and he will mark off one of his special ability points before then casting Magical Arrow. That will fire a rare magical arrow, adding 1d4 damage to any attack roll in any square within or range 3, meaning 3 squares from the ranger in any direction. He will roll a d8 plus a d4, totaling in this case 9 damage. The necromancer rolls a d6 to defend and rolls a 5. So for this counterattack, the ranger has used a special ability point and inflicted 4 damage on the necromancer. And that would be the end of the round. Now let us assume that the ranger was more successful in his attack, and the necromancer less successful in his defense. Since the necromancer was the aggressor, if he is killed, the ranger must remain in his position and will not take the position previously held by the necromancer. Let's reset our ranger back to full strength. Now, let's assume that a flesh golem attacks the ranger. This is a melee combat. The flesh golem, moving 3 spaces prior to his attack, will activate a special ability called Juggernaut. Juggernaut reads when this unit moves 3 spaces or more to attack, adds +1 on the first attack. The other passive ability for the flesh golem reads, all adjacent enemies suffer a malus of -1 on defense rolls, meaning that for this attack, the flesh golem gains a +1 to his attack, and the defender a -1 on his defense roll. But because the defender was previously attacked by a necromancer, he takes another -1 to his defense roll, meaning a -2 to his defense. The flesh golem will roll a d10 for his attack, equaling 5. He also gets a +1 to that, totaling 6. The ranger will roll a d6, totaling 3. However, because he had previously taken an attack from the necromancer, he has a -1 to his defense, and Hateful Glare by the flesh golem gives him another -1. So he would roll a total of 1 and takes 4 damage from the flesh golem. The ranger would then get a counterattack, however, in melee, and he rolls a 2. The flesh golem rolls a d8 for his defense, and he rolls a 3. So the ranger would take an additional 1 damage. Since the flesh golem was not successful in killing the ranger, he does not return to his original position, nor does he take the ranger's position. He must stay where he has landed. Thank you for watching, and if you have any additional questions, please type them in the comments below, and I can create a new video describing exactly how things are intended to work within Kings of Kirth. We hope you love the table, and we hope you love our game as well.